Boarding an Attic with Edgar Allan Poe. Tools: clawhammer, ripsaw. Materials: floor grade chipboard, nails, wood adhesive. I'm Mark Crick. My new book is Sartre Sink, which is a great writer's complete book of DIY, in which 14 of the world's greatest writers will attempt to take on 14 different jobs for the home to teach you how to become a fully rounded craftsman or woman at home. It's the second in a trilogy of books of domestic arts. The first was Kafka Soup, which was a complete history of literature in 14 recipes, 17 recipes. And the third and final, will be a writer's book of gardening, still under development. Probably shouldn't have said under development, I probably should have said still in the potting shed. My intention was to lay a floor. To this end, I had made measurements and caused to be delivered a quantity of floor-grade chipboard of the tongue and groove variety. And it was in the area of the kitchen that Caesar's wife complained of insufficient space and work surfaces. Caesar was informed that a large part of the workspace was taken up with condiments, appliances, and recipe books, and he saw that there was a need for a shelf. I've always written, you know, my childhood I was obsessed with reading, probably shutting myself away in the house on a bright sunny day when my parents said, "Why don't you go and play outside?" And so all these kind of voices that have been sort of, I don't know, bizarrely sort of my companions running around in my head, this seemed a kind of nice way to exercise all of those as well. Caesar levied wood for a shelf measuring 2 meters long, 20 centimeters deep, and 2.5 centimeters thick. 3 brackets to be placed at regular intervals, screws and raw plugs. He also gathered tools: a drill with number 8 masonry bit, a screwdriver, and a spirit level. I wanted to find a vehicle that those voices could sort of perhaps best be seen in, and so I wanted something which had simple instructions, which were fairly consistent, but which each voice could approach in their own way. My sense of dread accelerated until a long, low groan involuntarily escaped from my lungs. For you, reader, to conceive of the horror of my sensations is, I presume, utterly impossible. Well, obviously it's essential that every writer has a really strong voice, that almost if that writer was selling a bicycle in your local newspaper, you would know immediately that Franz Kafka's selling his bike. And so that's the sort of beginning, and then after that you then trying to choose, in the case of Kafka Soup recipes, in the case of Sartre Sink, DIY jobs that will enable you to use that writer's language. So if it's Edgar Allan Poe, well, you probably need to put him somewhere dark and sort of menacing, so you're going to have him working in the cellar or in the attic, which you wouldn't necessarily do with Julius Caesar, So. Allowing her hand to be guided in his, she saw how the sticky white paint clung to the dark hair as she dipped the little brush into the open pot and ran the bristles along the edges of each panel. There's nothing more erotic than painting, is there? The paint, the brushes, the rubbing down. Yes, I was surprised how Anais Nin is a fantastic writer. She seemed to have the perfect voice to take on the task of painting a door. But the painter remained impassive. His passion found expression only in his work. Deep down, she dreamed of a man who would rule her, take the lead sexually, yet the impassivity of the artist stirred her. Her admiration turned to love, and she longed for him to make demands of her. And I think in doing these pastiches, for me it was a bit like a fancy dress party. When you go to a fancy dress party, you can dress up as Zorro and you're way more outrageously behaved or more confident than you would normally be as a kind of insecure Englishman. And I think in taking on the voices of these writers, that seemed to liberate me, and I felt, perhaps I could disguise myself and write more freely in a way, despite having that restriction. And I think there is something in any field, really, particularly in the arts, when you impose restrictions on yourself, it's often quite liberating. When I did the first book, Kafka Soup, my original intention was to illustrate it with photography. Somehow, you can't illustrate a recipe in the style of Jane Austen with a photograph. So I had to start, drawing and illustrating, and in the end, the illustrations also became a collection of pastiches of famous artists. And it's interesting to see how the same movements and the same kind of ideas that appear in literature are also going on, often at the same time, in painting and sort of, the visual arts. So Sartre Sink is illustrated with a collection of, there are photographs, there are oil paintings, there are sketches, and there's even a mosaic, a Roman mosaic to illustrate Caesar's instructions on how to put up a shelf, which took a long time to do. I now know why it's only a popular art in countries where there are slaves. They'll all work? Well, if you follow the instructions. Apparently there's lots of good gamekeeping tips in Lady Chatterley's Lover. And I guess this sort of works in a similar way. If you follow read through the stories, they will have all that you need to know to put a shelf up, retile your bathroom, board out your loft, and many other helpful tasks at home. So come along to the School of Life. It's a fantastic place, a cradle of culture, sitting in the heart of Bloomsbury, and I will be there every night this week from 6:15 till 6:30, reading, giving a theatrical reading from Sartre Sink at the School of Life on 70 Marchmont Street.